Zora didn't know the wolf bleeding out in her garden was the Alpha King. She didn't know he'd been searching for someone with her gift for 2 years, following whispers and rumors across 3 territories. She didn't know that the assassins who'd left him for dead were already celebrating their victory, certain they'd severed the last threat to their master's plan. And she definitely didn't know that saving his life would unravel the quiet, invisible existence she'd built from the ashes of her rejection. All Zora knew, as the rain hammered against her cottage roof that night, was that something was dying in her garden. She felt it the way she always felt things, a pull behind her ribs, an ache that wasn't hers but demanded her attention. Most people ignored such feelings. Zora had learned long ago that she couldn't. She grabbed her lantern and pushed out into the storm. The wind tore at her cloak as she crossed the muddy yard, rain plastering her dark hair to her face. Her cottage sat at the edge of Thornwick, far enough from the village that she could pretend she wasn't an outcast, close enough that she could still trade her herbs and tinctures for bread and salt. It was a half-life, but it was hers. The pull led her to the old oak at the garden's edge. At first, she thought it was a shadow. A dark mass slumped against the roots. Then lightning split the sky and she saw the fir. Black as a moonless night, matted with rain and something darker. Blood. Zora's lungs seized. The wolf was massive, easily twice the size of any she'd seen. Its flanks heaved with labored breathing, and even from 3 feet away, she could see the wounds, deep gashes that gleamed silver at the edges. Silver-laced blades. Someone had tried very hard to kill this wolf. She should go inside. Should pretend she hadn't seen anything. A rejected Omega helping a strange wolf. If anyone found out, they'd accuse her of harboring rogues or worse. Alpha Davin had made his warning clear when he'd cast her out 3 years ago. Stay invisible, or I'll finish what I started. But the pull behind her ribs tightened, and Zora found herself kneeling in the mud, her hands hovering over the wolf's matted fur. That's when she saw them. Not with her eyes. She'd learned long ago that her gift didn't work that way. She saw with something deeper, something that lived in the space between heartbeats. The threads. Faint, gossamer thin lines of light that connected every wolf to their pack, their family, their mate. She'd been able to see them since she was a child, though she'd quickly learned never to speak of it. This wolf's threads were wailing. She could see them, dozens of connections stretching out into the darkness, toward people who loved him, who were searching for him. But they were fraying, being severed by whatever dark magic coated those silver wounds. As she watched, another thread snapped, dissolving into nothing. He was being cut off from everyone who mattered to him. He was being unmade. No, Zora breathed. She didn't make a conscious decision, her hands pressed against his fur, and she reached. Not physically, but with that part of her she'd spent her whole life hiding. She found the severed threads and held them, pouring her own energy into the fraying connections like a woman trying to stop a dam from breaking with her bare hands. The wolf's eyes flew open. They were gold, bright as summer wheat, and filled with a pain that went beyond the physical. For one endless moment he stared at her, and Zora felt something shift. A new thread shimmered into existence between them. Faint, barely visible, but there. Then the wolf's eyes rolled back, and Zora's vision went dark. She woke on her cottage floor. Gray morning light filtered through the windows. The storm had passed, leaving behind the clean smell of rain-washed earth. Zora's entire body ached, the deep bone weariness that came from using her gift too much. She pushed herself up, slowly groaning, and froze. A man sat in her chair by the cold hearth. He was watching her with eyes the color of burnished gold, familiar in a way that made her stomach drop. His hair was black and damp, falling past his collar. A rough blanket was wrapped around his shoulders, but she could still see the fresh pink scars on his chest where the wounds had been. the wound she'd healed. On a wolf. "You're awake," he said, and his voice was low, rough-edged, the kind that made her think of distant thunder and things that prowled through ancient forests. Zora scrambled backward until her shoulders hit the wall. "Who are you? How did you get in my house?" "The same way I got into your garden." He didn't move, but she could feel the coiled power in him, the predator's stillness. "You saved my life. I need to know how." "I don't know what you're talking about." "Yes, you do." His golden eyes held hers. "I felt what you did. Felt you reach inside and hold me together when everything was coming apart." He leaned forward slightly and the blanket slipped, revealing the hard planes of his chest, the scars that mapped a warrior's life. "No healer has ever been able to do what you did. No one has been able to see the threads, let alone mend them." Zora's blood ran cold. "How do you know about—" "Because I've been looking for someone like you for 2 years." He stood, and she realized just how tall he was, how much space he commanded even in her small cottage. "My name is Kale, and you're Zora, the Omega Thornwick cast out for being unnatural." "How do you know my name?" "I know many things." He moved toward her slowly, giving her time to bolt if she chose. She didn't. Couldn't. Her legs wouldn't obey. "I know Davin rejected you because your gift frightened him. I know you've survived alone for 3 years, healing wounded animals and pretending you're ordinary. I know you've been hiding what you can do because the last person who discovered your secret tried to have you killed." Zora's heart slammed against her ribs. No one knew about that. No one could know. "Who are you?" she whispered. "I told you. My name is Kale." He stopped 3 feet away, close enough that she could see the flecks of amber in his irises, the exhaustion carved into the lines around his eyes. "But most people call me the Alpha King." The world tilted beneath Zora's feet. The Alpha King. She'd heard stories, of course. Everyone had. The young ruler who'd united the northern territories through equal measures of diplomacy and ruthlessness. Who'd lost his parents to assassins and then his sister to raiders 2 years later? Who'd spent the time since hunting for answers with a ferocity that had become legend? They said he could smell lies like other wolves smelled fear. They said he'd torn out the throat of the man who'd killed his father with his bare hands. They said his eyes burned like molten gold when he was angry. Looking at him now, Zora believed every word. "You're him," she breathed. "You're really him." "Does that change things?" "It changes everything." She pressed harder against the wall, as if she could phase through it. "Why are you here? What do you want with me?" Kale studied her for a long moment, something unreadable moving behind his eyes. Then he reached into the pocket of his borrowed trousers. Her father's old clothes, she realized with a jolt, and withdrew a small object wrapped in dark cloth. "I need your help finding someone," he said quietly. "Someone who was taken from me 2 years ago." He unwrapped the cloth, revealing a delicate silver chain with a small pendant, a wolf howling at a crescent moon. Even from across the room, Zora could feel the object's energy pulsing like a heartbeat. "This belonged to my sister," Kale continued. "Mira. She was 14 when they took her. 14 years old, dragged from her bed in the middle of the night while I was 3 territories away playing politics." His jaw tightened. "I've spent every moment since trying to find her. Every resource, every favor, and every threat I could muster. Nothing has worked. And you think I can help?" "I know you can." His eyes locked onto hers. "Your gift, the ability to see threads, to read the connections between people and objects. It's exactly what I need." This necklace was around Mira's neck when they took her. The chain broke during the struggle. If you can read it, see what she saw, feel what she felt, you think I can track her. Zora's voice came out hollow. "I think you're my last hope." The words hung between them, heavy with desperation. Zora looked at the necklace, felt its pull against her senses. The threads connected to it were old, faded, but still present. Still readable. She could do this. She could help him. But at what cost? "If I use my gift for you," she said slowly, "people will find out what I can do. Word will spread. And then, no one will touch you." Kale's voice hardened to steel. "You'll have my protection. My pack's protection. Anyone who threatens you answers to me." Pretty words. "I've heard pretty words before." "I'm sure you have." He didn't flinch from her bitterness. "But I'm not offering words. I'm offering a blood oath." Zora stilled. Blood oaths were sacred among wolves. Unbreakable bonds that carried the weight of magic itself. No one offered them lightly. "You'd bind yourself to protect me?" "Yes." "Why?" "You don't know me." "I could be lying about what I can do. I could be useless." "You're not." He said it with absolute certainty. "I felt what you did last night. Felt you hold my threads together when they were unraveling. That kind of power doesn't lie." He took a step closer and Zora's pulse jumped. "7 days," he said. "Give me 7 days. Come to Ironhold, read the objects I've gathered. Help me find Mira's trail. In exchange, I'll give you enough gold to disappear forever. New name, new territory, a life where no one knows what you can do." "And if I refuse?" "Then I'll leave." His expression didn't change, but she sensed something shift beneath it. Disappointment? Maybe. Or resignation. "I won't force you, Zora. I've done many things in my life, but I won't become someone who traps people into servitude. You have a choice." A choice. When was the last time anyone had given her that? Zora looked at the necklace again. Thought about the girl who'd worn it. 14 years old, torn from everything she knew, held captive by people who saw her only as leverage. Thought about her own mother, who'd had a weaker version of this gift, who'd died protecting Zora from those who feared what they didn't understand. Thought about the thread that had appeared last night, shimmering between her and this dangerous, desperate king. 7 days, she said finally, and then I'm free to go. You have my word. I want the blood oath, now. Something flickered in Kale's eyes. Surprise, perhaps, or respect. He pulled a knife from his belt, a beautiful thing with a bone handle and a blade etched with symbols she didn't recognize. Without hesitation, he drew it across his palm. Blood welled up, dark in the morning light. He offered his hand. Zora took the knife with trembling fingers and made her own shallow cut. The pain was sharp, clarifying. When she pressed her palm to his, she felt it. A shock of recognition that went bone deep, like her soul had been waiting for this contact her entire life. Magic flared between them, sealing the oath. But beneath it, wrapped around it, she felt something else. That thread from last night, the one that had appeared unbidden, suddenly blazed bright. A bond. The kind her mother had whispered about in the darkness. The kind that only happened once in a lifetime. Kale's hand tightened on hers, his pupils dilating. He felt it too. Neither of them spoke. After a moment that stretched too long, Zora pulled her hand away. Kale let her go, though she saw the effort it cost him. "I'll send someone for you at dawn," he said, his voice rougher than before. "Pack light. We ride fast." Then he was gone, slipping through her door and into the gray morning, leaving Zora alone with a bleeding palm and a bond she hadn't asked for. She stared at the cut on her hand and wondered what she'd just agreed to. Dawn came too quickly. Zora had barely slept, her mind spinning through possibilities and fears. She packed her few belongings, 2 dresses, a comb that had been her mother's, a pouch of dried herbs she couldn't bear to leave behind, and sat by her window, watching the sky lighten from black to gray to pale rose. When the knock came, she was ready. A stern-faced woman stood on her doorstep, flanked by 2 massive wolves in their shifted forms. Her silver hair was cropped short, and her eyes held the sharp assessment of someone who'd spent decades separating threats from allies. "I'm Rin," the woman said. "The king sent me to escort you to Ironhold." No small talk. No pleasantries. Zora appreciated that. She followed Rin through the waking forest, acutely aware of the wolves padding silently beside them. If anyone from Thornwick saw her leaving with the Alpha King's people, there would be talk. Accusations. Possibly violence. But they made it to the road without incident, where horses waited. The ride took most of the day. They left the familiar paths after the first hour, following trails that seemed to exist only in Rin's memory. The forest grew older, darker, until Zora felt like she'd stepped into a different world entirely. Then the trees parted, and she saw it. Ironhold rose from the mountainside like it had grown there, all dark stone and sharp towers. Waterfalls cascaded down cliff faces on either side, filling the air with mist and thunder. It was beautiful in a fierce, unforgiving way. The kind of beauty that reminded you it could kill you if you weren't careful. They crossed a bridge over a chasm so deep, Zora couldn't see the bottom. Inside the walls, the stronghold bustled with activity. Warriors sparring in training yards, children chasing each other between buildings, merchants calling out their wares from wooden stalls. Everyone moved with purpose, but there was an ease to it. These people weren't afraid. Zora had never seen a pack like this. "The king is waiting," Rin said, leading her through corridors lined with tapestries depicting hunts and battles. "He asked that you be brought to him immediately." They stopped before a heavy oak door. Rin knocked once, then stepped aside. "Come in," Kale's voice called. Zora pushed open the door. The room was a study of some kind. Bookshelves lining the walls, maps spread across a massive table, a fire crackling in a stone hearth. Kale stood by the window, backlit by afternoon sun. He'd changed since yesterday. Gone were the borrowed clothes, replaced by dark leather and a gray tunic that matched his eyes. His black hair was tied back, revealing the sharp angles of his face. When he turned, his gaze found hers immediately, and that thread between them hummed. "You came," he said quietly. "I gave my word." "Still, thank you." He gestured to the table, where several objects lay spread across dark velvet. "These are what I've collected. Things from the night Mira was taken. Things from the places we believe she's been held since." Zora approached slowly, her gift already stirring. The necklace was there, along with a torn piece of fabric, a small wooden figure carved to look like a wolf, a blood-stained ribbon. Each item pulsed with residual energy, memories waiting to be read. "It won't be pleasant," she warned. "What I see. Sometimes it's just flashes, colors, emotions. But sometimes it's more. Like living through someone else's memory. I understand. And it drains me. Leaves me shaky. Sometimes sick." Kale moved closer, not quite touching but near enough that she could feel his warmth. "I'll be here. If you need to stop, just say so." Zora nodded, then reached for the necklace. The moment her fingers closed around the silver, the world dissolved. She's running, bare feet on cold stone. Men's voices behind her, laughing, making a game of the chase. She screams for her brother, but he's not there. He's never there when she needs him. Hands grab her arms. She thrashes, bites, draws blood. Someone hits her, a crack of pain across her cheek. And then the world goes dark. Zora gasped, dropping the necklace. Kale caught her elbow, steadying her. "What did you see?" "The night they took her." Zora's voice shook. She was so scared. "She called for you." Pain flickered across his face, there and gone. "What else?" She picked up the wooden wolf next. This vision was older, hazier. A cold room, stone walls, a window too high to reach. She carves the wolf with a stolen knife, working for hours, days. It's something to do. Something to keep her sane. A woman's voice outside the door. Lord Varn wants her moved to the Eastern Holding. He says the king is getting too close. Varn. Zora dropped the carving, swaying slightly. That name again. Lord Varn. Cale had gone rigid. Varn is on my council. He was my father's most trusted advisor. He's the one who has her. Zora gripped the edge of the table. I'm certain of it. Silence stretched between them, heavy with betrayal. 2 years, Kyle said finally, his voice dangerously soft. He's sat at my table for 2 years, helping me search for her, knowing exactly where she was. I'm sorry. Don't be. His eyes lifted to hers, and she saw something cold moving in their depths. Something lethal. You've given me more answers in 5 minutes than I've found in 2 years of searching. That's not something to apologize for. He reached out, his fingers brushing her elbow where he'd steadied her earlier. The touch was light, almost hesitant. Rest now. Eat something. We'll continue tomorrow. There's more I can read? Tomorrow. His voice softened. You're pale as snow and shaking. I won't break you to find her, Zora. She wanted to argue, wanted to prove she was stronger than she looked. But her legs were trembling and her vision was swimming, so she let Rin lead her to a room that was larger than her entire cottage. A bed piled with furs, a window overlooking the waterfalls, a fire already burning in the hearth. She ate the food a servant brought, roasted meat and fresh bread and honey that tasted like summer. Then she collapsed into the bed and slept harder than she had in years. Her last thought, before darkness claimed her, was of that thread connecting her to Cale. It was brighter now, stronger, and she had no idea what to do about it. The next 5 days fell into a rhythm that Zora hadn't expected. Mornings belonged to the threads. Cale had gathered objects from the night Mira was taken, a torn piece of her dress, a leather bracelet she'd worn since childhood, a letter she'd been writing when the attack began. Each item pulsed with residual energy, memories and emotions imprinted like fingerprints on glass. Zora worked through them slowly, carefully, letting the visions come without fighting them. The bracelet showed her Mira laughing with her brother just hours before the raid. The torn dress revealed chaos, fire, screaming, hands dragging her through a shattered window. The letter was the hardest. Mira had been writing to a friend about a boy she'd noticed, her words full of that trembling hope that only the young could feel. She'd never finished the sentence. After each reading, Zora emerged shaking, hollowed out like a gourd scraped clean, and each time, Cale was there, not hovering, not demanding more than she could give, just present. A glass of water in his hand, a steadying grip on her elbow when her knees buckled. Silence when she needed it. Questions only when she was ready. You don't have to push so hard, he said on the 3rd morning, catching her as she swayed after a particularly brutal vision. We have time. Do we? Zora's voice came out raw. Every thread I follow is older, fainter. If we wait too long, then we wait too long together. His hands were warm on her arms, his gaze searching her face. I won't break you to save her, Zora. That's not a trade I'm willing to make. Something cracked in her chest at those words. No one had ever prioritized her well-being before. Not her pack, who'd tolerated her strangeness until it became inconvenient. Not Davin, who'd rejected her with cold efficiency the moment he realized what she could do. She'd learned to expect nothing, to need no one. Cale was making that very difficult. Afternoons, she explored Ironhold. The stronghold was nothing like Thornwick's cramped village, where every building huddled together as if afraid of the forest. Here, structures sprawled across the mountainside with confident permanence, training yards, forges, communal halls, gardens that somehow flourished despite the altitude. And everywhere, wolves moved with purpose but not fear. They noticed her, of course. the stranger in their midst, the rejected Omega their king had brought home. But instead of whispers and cold shoulders, Zora found curious smiles, respectful nods, children who ran up to ask if she could really see the invisible strings that connected everyone. "They're threads," she corrected a young boy named Pip, who'd taken to following her around. "And I'm not supposed to talk about it." "Why not?" Pip's face scrunched with confusion. "My mum says your gift is why the king finally smiled again, says you're going to bring Mira home." Zora didn't know how to respond to that. Evenings were the most dangerous, because evenings meant dinner with Kyle. Just the two of them in his private study, eating simple food while firelight danced across the walls. He asked about her life before, her childhood, her mother who'd had a weaker version of the same gift, her father who'd died protecting them both from a rogue attack when she was 12. In return, he told her about Mira, how she'd been born early, small and fierce, determined to prove she was just as strong as any warrior despite her delicate frame. How she'd once tried to fight a bear to impress a boy, and ended up getting rescued by said bear, who turned out to be a shifting elder playing a prank. How she'd written him letters every week when he traveled, letters he'd saved in a chest beside his bed. "You love her," Zora said quietly on the fourth evening. "She's my sister, my only family." Kale stared into the flames. "When our parents died, I was 19, suddenly responsible for an entire pack, a grieving 12-year-old, and a territory surrounded by enemies. I made mistakes, focused so much on being strong that I forgot to be present." His jaw tightened. "The night she was taken, I was 3 territories away, negotiating a treaty that could have waited. I didn't even feel the attack through our bond. By the time I knew something was wrong, stop." Zora reached across the table, her fingers brushing his wrist. The contact sent that familiar spark racing up her arm, but she didn't pull back. "You didn't fail her. Someone betrayed you. Someone inside your own circle." Kale's eyes lifted to hers. "You saw that? In the threads. The attack was too precise, too perfectly timed. They knew exactly where your guards would be, exactly when Mira would be alone." She hesitated, then pressed forward. "I saw a face. Older man, silver at his temples, a scar through his left eyebrow." The color drained from Kale's face. "Varn," he breathed. "My father's oldest advisor. He's been on my council since before I was born. He's the one who orchestrated it. I'm certain." Before we continue, please take 2 seconds to like this video and subscribe if you haven't already. Kale stood abruptly, pacing to the window. His hands clenched at his sides, and Zora could see the war raging inside him, fury and grief and the terrible weight of betrayal. "He held me when I was a child," Kyle said, his voice rough. "Counseled me through every decision since I took the throne. And all this time, you couldn't have known." "I should have." He turned back to her, and the vulnerability in his expression made her chest ache. "What else did you see?" Zora rose, crossing to stand before him. "Mira is alive. They've moved her several times, but she's alive, and she's waiting for you." "Where?" "A place called Ravenscar, a fortress in the eastern mountains." She paused. "They're holding her as leverage, Kale. Varn doesn't want a ransom. He wants the throne." Kale's voice was ice. "He wants to control Ironhold through Mira, force her into a mating with his son, then eliminate me." "Yes." The silence stretched between them, heavy with implication. Then Kale's hand lifted, his fingers hovering near her cheek without quite touching. "You've given me more in 5 days than 2 years of searching ever did," he said quietly. "How do I repay that?" "You don't owe me anything. Our agreement has nothing to do with this." His eyes burned into hers. "This is about you, what you've risked, what you've endured." His fingers finally made contact, feather light against her jaw. "You're extraordinary, Zora." Her heart stuttered. I'm an outcast with a strange gift. We don't exactly. Don't. His thumb traced her cheekbone. Don't tell me what we don't do. Not when I feel this. Not when you feel it too. She should step back. Should remind him of the bond that shouldn't exist. The 7 days that were almost over. The 100 reasons this was a terrible idea. Instead, she leaned into his touch and let herself wonder what it would feel like to belong. On the 6th night, Zora found Kale on the eastern watchtower, staring toward the mountains where his sister waited. The wind was sharp this high up, carrying the bite of approaching winter. She wrapped her cloak tighter and joined him at the stone railing, close enough to feel his warmth but not quite touching. Couldn't sleep? She asked. Too many thoughts. He didn't look at her, but she sensed his awareness shift, that predator's attention focusing on her despite his apparent stillness. We ride tomorrow. The scouts confirm Varn is at Ravenscar with a small force. If we move fast, you'll have her back before he realizes you're coming. That's the plan. His hands gripped the stone, but plans have a way of falling apart. Zora studied his profile, the sharp line of his jaw, the tension in his shoulders, the way moonlight caught the silver threads in his dark hair. He looked like a man carrying the weight of mountains, and she wished she could take some of it from him. You're afraid, she said softly. He finally looked at her, and the rawness in his eyes stole her breath. Terrified, he admitted, not of the fight, not of Varn or his men. He turned to face her fully. I'm afraid of what happens after. After? After I have Mira back. After the 7 days end. After you're free to leave, and I have to watch you walk away. Zora's heart clenched. Kale. I know what I promised. His voice was rough, almost pained. Freedom. Choice. No obligations beyond our agreement. And I meant it. Every word. He stepped closer, and she could feel the heat radiating from him, could see the war raging behind his eyes. But I need you to know something before tomorrow, before everything gets complicated. What? This bond between us, the thread that appeared when you saved me. I didn't choose it. Neither did you. His hand lifted, hovering near her face the way it had the night before, wanting but not demanding. But what I feel for you goes beyond any magic, beyond fate or destiny or whatever force connected us. What do you feel? The question came out barely above a whisper. Kale's eyes searched hers. I feel like I've been holding my breath for years, and you're my first gasp of air. Like every broken piece of me recognized every broken piece of you, and for the first time, the cracks don't feel like weaknesses. His voice dropped lower. I feel like I could love you, Zora. Not because of what you can do or what some bond dictates, because of who you are. The world went still. Zora had spent 3 years telling herself she didn't need anyone. That rejection had carved out the part of her that could hope, could want, could believe she deserved more than survival. She'd built walls so high she'd forgotten what existed beyond them. But Kale had climbed them anyway, not with force or demands, with patience, with vulnerability, with the kind of steady, stubborn presence that wore away at stone like water. I'm terrified too, she heard herself say, of trusting this, of believing it's real, of letting myself fall and finding out you'll drop me like everyone else. I won't. You can't promise that. No. His hand finally touched her cheek, cupping her face with a tenderness that made her eyes burn. But I can promise to catch you every time I'm able, to choose you every morning and fight for you every night, to be worthy of whatever pieces of yourself you're willing to share. His forehead dropped to hers. I know it's not enough. I know you have every reason to protect yourself. But Zora, she kissed him. The choice was hers, and she made it deliberately, rising on her toes, closing the distance, pressing her lips to his with all the hope and terror and desperate wanting she'd kept locked away for years. Cale went rigid with surprise. Then his arms came around her, pulling her close, and he kissed her back, like she was the only solid thing in a world that had been spinning off its axis. His mouth was warm, urgent, his hands trembling slightly where they pressed against her back. When they finally broke apart, both gasping, Zora pressed her forehead to his chest. "Ask me again," she whispered. "After we bring Mira home, after the 7 days. Ask me to stay." Cale's arms tightened around her. "And if I ask?" She looked up, meeting his eyes. "I might say yes." The hope that blazed across his face was almost too bright to bear. He kissed her again, softer this time, reverent, and she let herself sink into it, let herself believe that maybe, just maybe, she'd found something worth risking everything for. They stood wrapped in each other as the moon climbed higher, stealing warmth against the cold, pretending tomorrow wasn't coming. But tomorrow always comes, and with it, the darkness Zora hadn't seen lurking in the shadows. Zora woke before dawn with dread pooling in her stomach. Something was wrong. She could feel it in the air. A tension, a whisper of wrongness that raised the hair on her arms. Her gift had always been sensitive to disturbances in the threads, and right now, those threads were screaming. She threw off her covers and reached for the object on her nightstand, the last item she hadn't yet read. A small iron pendant that had been found near the site where Kyle was attacked. She'd been avoiding it, sensing the darkness coiled within. Now, with the rescue mission hours away, she couldn't afford to leave any stone unturned. Her fingers closed around the cold metal. The vision slammed into her like a physical blow, a chamber lit by torches. Varn's silver-templed face twisted with cold satisfaction. 2 men in dark leathers reporting with military precision. "The Omega, the one who healed the king. She sees threads?" "Yes, my lord, our spy confirmed it. She's been reading objects for days. She knows about you. About Ravenscar. About everything." Varn's smile was a knife. "Then she dies before they ride. Make it look like an accident. A fall from the watchtower, perhaps. The king will be devastated. Grief-stricken. Exactly the state I need him in when he arrives at Ravenscar. And if he still comes for his sister? Then he walks into my trap broken and blind." Varn laughed, and it was the cruelest sound Zora had ever heard. "Kill the Omega tonight. The king falls tomorrow." Zora ripped out of the vision, gasping. Her door slammed open. Cale stood in the frame, wild-eyed, wearing only sleep trousers. "I felt your fear through the bond. What happened?" "Varn knows about me." The words tumbled out. "He has a spy here, in Ironhold. They're planning to kill me tonight. Make it look like an accident. They want you broken when you ride into Ravenscar. It's a trap, Cale. The whole thing is a trap." His face went white, then blazed with fury so intense it seemed to heat the air. "Who?" he growled. "Who's the spy?" "I don't know yet. I couldn't see their face in the vision." She pressed a hand to her temple. "But I can find them. The thread connecting them to Varn. It has a specific feel. Oily. Wrong. If I concentrate during the ride, I can identify them." Cale crossed the room in 3 strides, gripping her arms. "Then we leave now. I'll send you somewhere safe. The northern reaches, maybe. Alpha Ceres owes me a favor. You'll be protected until—" "No." The word cut through his planning like a blade. "Zora, if I run, Varn wins." She held his gaze, drawing on every ounce of courage she possessed. "He keeps Mira. He springs his trap. You ride in blind and angry, and he destroys you." She gripped his wrists. "I won't be the weapon he uses against you. And I won't let you die for me." His roar echoed off the walls, raw with terror. Gone was the controlled Alpha King. This was just Cale. A man facing the loss of something precious. something he'd only just found. You won't, Zora said firmly, because we're going to use this. Use what? He thinks I don't know. That's our advantage. Her mind raced, pieces clicking together. We let the spy report that everything's normal. We ride out as planned, but with a decoy in my place. Meanwhile, I stay hidden among the riders and track the spy through their thread. Absolutely not. If something goes wrong, then I run. I don't fight, I don't hesitate. I run and I let you handle Varn. She cupped his face in her hands, forcing him to look at her. This is my choice, Kale. My risk to take. You promised me freedom, remember? This is me using it. His jaw worked, a muscle ticking beneath the skin. She could see him warring with himself, the king who strategized, the protector who wanted to lock her away from all danger, and the man who'd promised he wouldn't trap her. If anything happens to you, his voice cracked. It won't. You can't know that. No, she admitted. But I know I'd rather die fighting beside you than live knowing I ran while you walked into an ambush. Kyle closed his eyes, something breaking in his expression. I just found you, he whispered. After everything, losing my parents, losing Mira, 2 years of emptiness, I finally found something that makes the crown worth wearing. And now you're asking me to risk it all over again. I'm asking you to trust me. She leaned close, her lips brushing his. The way I trusted you. The way you've earned. Silence stretched between them. Then Kale's arms wrapped around her, crushing her against his chest. If you die, he said against her hair, I will burn this entire kingdom to the ground. I will tear Varn apart with my bare hands and salt the earth where he stood. Do you understand me? Yes. Promise me you'll be careful. I promise. He pulled back, his eyes blazing with that terrible combination of love and fear. Then we do this together. He kissed her, hard, desperate, a promise and a plea all at once. Together or not at all. Zora nodded, her heart pounding. By sunrise, the plan was set. And somewhere in the shadows of Ironhold, a spy watched and reported that everything was proceeding exactly as Lord Varn had hoped. They had no idea the Omega could feel them through the threads, and that she was already tracking their oily, twisted connection with every step. The ride to Ravenscar took 2 days. Zora traveled in disguise, hooded cloak, borrowed leathers, riding in the middle of the formation where she'd be hardest to target. A female warrior named Senna wore Zora's clothes and rode beside Kale, playing the part of the Omega healer for any watching eyes. The spy had taken the bait. Zora felt them throughout the journey, that thread of wrongness snaking through the group, connected to someone riding near the rear. She didn't look, didn't react, but she memorized the feeling. By the second hour, she knew exactly who it was. A quiet scout named Brennan, who'd joined Ironhold's ranks just 6 months before. She passed the information to Rin at their first rest stop. By nightfall, Brennan was bound and gagged in a supply wagon, his usefulness as a double agent finished. They made camp the first night in a sheltered valley. Kale found excuses to pass near her, their eyes meeting briefly across the fire. Every glance said what words couldn't. Stay safe. Be ready. I'm here. She slept poorly, dreams filled with silver blades and screaming threads. By the second evening, Ravenscar loomed before them. The fortress was carved into the mountainside, all sharp angles and defensive walls. Torches flickered along the battlements, and Zora could see guards patrolling with military precision. 30 men, maybe 40, Rin reported quietly. More than we expected. Kyle studied the fortress with cold calculation. Varn's been recruiting, building his own army right under my nose. There's a servants' entrance on the eastern side, Zora said. All eyes turned to her. I saw it in the visions. It leads to the lower kitchens, then up through the back corridors to where they're keeping Mira. You're certain? I'm certain. Kyle nodded slowly. Rin, take half our wolves and create a distraction at the main gate. Make noise. Draw their attention. He looked at Zora. The rest come with me. Kale. Rin's voice was hesitant. If this is a trap, then we spring it on our terms. They moved under cover of darkness. Zora led the way to the servants' entrance, her gift guiding them through shadows and blind spots. The door was locked, but one of Kale's wolves, a wiry female named Thessa, had it open in seconds. Inside, the fortress was cold and silent. They crept through corridors lit by guttering torches, past sleeping servants' quarters and storage rooms filled with weapons. Zora's heart hammered against her ribs, but she kept her breathing steady, following the thread that connected her to the objects she'd read. Closer, closer. They reached a heavy oak door at the end of a long hallway. She's here, Zora breathed. Kale moved to open it, and Varn's voice echoed from the darkness behind them. I wondered when you'd arrive, Your Majesty. They spun. Varn stood at the corridor's entrance, flanked by 20 armed wolves. His silver-templed hair gleamed in the torchlight, and his smile was cold and satisfied. Did you really think I wouldn't prepare for this? Varn stepped forward, his warriors spreading out to block any escape. Your little Omega is clever, I'll give her that. But I have more than one spy. We've been waiting. Kyle moved in front of Zora, his body coiled for violence. Where's my sister? Safe, for now. Varn's eyes flicked to Zora. Though I must admit, I'm disappointed. I gave orders to kill you before you left Ironhold. It seems my people were less competent than I hoped. Your spy, Zora said quietly, is currently tied up in a wagon 3 miles from here. We knew about them before we ever left. Varn's smile faltered. You think we rode into your trap blind? Kale's voice was ice. Every step has been calculated, Varn. Every move anticipated. It doesn't matter. Varn recovered quickly, gesturing to his warriors. You're outnumbered, surrounded. Your distraction at the gates has been contained. He drew his sword. Kill the king. Keep the Omega alive. She might still be useful. Varn's wolves advanced. Then the door behind Zora burst open. Mira stood in the frame, thin, pale, but blazing with fury. In her hands was a bow, arrow nocked and aimed directly at Varn's throat. Nobody moves, she said, her voice steady despite the tremor in her limbs. Mira. Varn laughed, though uncertainty flickered in his eyes. Put that down before you hurt yourself. 2 years. Mira's voice cracked. 2 years you kept me in that room. Fed me lies about my brother being dead. Told me no one was looking. The arrow didn't waver. I learned a lot in 2 years, Varn, including how to pick locks and steal weapons from careless guards. Mira. Kale's voice was thick with emotion. Hi, brother. She smiled, fierce and unbroken. Sorry I couldn't wait for the dramatic rescue. That moment of distraction was all they needed. Kale shifted, not fully, but enough. His hands became claws, his eyes blazing gold as he tore into Varn's warriors with a speed that stole Zora's breath. Rin and the others followed, the corridor exploding into chaos. Varn lunged for Mira. Zora moved faster. She didn't have claws or supernatural strength, but she had 3 years of surviving alone, and she had the element of surprise. Her body slammed into Varn's side, knocking him off course. They crashed against the wall, and Zora felt something crack. His rib or her shoulder. She couldn't tell. Varn's hand closed around her throat. Stupid girl, he snarled, squeezing. You should have run when you had the chance. Black spots danced in Zora's vision. She couldn't breathe, couldn't think. Then Varn's grip vanished. Kale had him by the throat, lifting the older man clear off the ground. His face was barely human, caught between forms, and his voice was a guttural growl. You took my sister. You threatened my mate. He slammed Varn against the stone wall. Give me one reason not to tear out your throat. Varn wheezed. Kill me, and you'll never know how deep this goes. I don't need you to know. Kale's grip tightened. I have her. His eyes met Zora's across the chaos, and she saw the question there, the choice he was offering her. He stands trial, she said quietly. Let your people see his treachery. Let them choose his fate. Something human flickered back into Kale's expression. He held Varn for one more moment, then threw him to the ground. Bind him, he ordered. If he tries to escape, kill him. Rin moved to comply. Then Kale crossed the corridor in 3 strides, pulling Zora into his arms. You're hurt, he said, his hands running over her shoulders, her arms. I'm alive. That's not the same thing. It's enough. She pulled back to look at him. Mira. Right here. Mira approached, the bow still in her hands. She looked between Kale and Zora, and despite everything, a small smile curved her lips. So, this is the Omega who can see threads? This is Zora, Kale said softly. She saved my life. Then she saved yours. Mira studied Zora for a long moment. Then she set down the bow and wrapped her thin arms around Zora's neck. Thank you, she whispered. Thank you for bringing him back to me. Zora's arms came up slowly, holding this fierce, broken girl who'd survived 2 years of captivity without losing herself. He never stopped looking, Zora murmured. Not for one day. Mira pulled back, tears streaming down her face. I know. That's the only reason I survived. Brother and sister looked at each other across the blood-stained corridor. Then Mira launched herself at Kale, and he caught her, holding her like he'd never let go again. I'm sorry, he said, his voice cracking. I'm so sorry it took so long. You came. Mira buried her face in his chest. That's all that matters. Zora watched them, her own eyes burning. This was what she'd fought for. This was what made all of it worthwhile. And when Kale's hand reached out to pull her into their embrace, she let herself be held. For the first time in her life, she let herself feel whole. The journey home took 3 days. Mira needed rest, and Kyle refused to push her. They traveled slowly, making camp early each evening, giving brother and sister time to reconnect. Zora often found them talking by the fire late into the night, filling in the gaps of 2 lost years. She gave them space, but every morning, Kale found her first. A brush of fingers against her hand. A quiet, "How did you sleep?" That meant so much more than the words suggested. The thread between them pulsed with warmth, and Zora stopped pretending she didn't feel it. Varn's trial was held the week after they returned. The evidence was overwhelming. Zora's testimony, documents recovered from Ravenscar, witnesses who came forward once they knew Varn couldn't retaliate. The council found him guilty of treason, kidnapping, attempted murder, and conspiracy against the crown. He hanged at dawn. Zora didn't attend. Instead, she sat in the garden where everything had begun, watching the sun rise over Ironhold's peaks. The same garden where a dying wolf had appeared in the rain. The same soil she'd knelt in, reaching out to hold together threads that were unraveling. So much had changed since that night. I thought I'd find you here. Kale settled beside her on the stone bench, close enough that their shoulders touched. The 7 days ended 2 weeks ago, he said quietly. You're free to go. You've been free for a while now. I know. But you're still here. Zora turned to look at him. The morning light caught the gold in his eyes, softened the hard lines of his face. He looked younger somehow, lighter, like the weight he'd been carrying had finally begun to lift. I'm still here, she agreed. Can I ask why? She took a breath, letting the fear and the hope exist together, neither one winning. Because 3 years ago, I was cast out for being different, told I was unnatural, unwanted, that I'd never belong anywhere. Her voice steadied. Then I saved a dying wolf in my garden, and everything changed. I found a purpose. A family. She reached for his hand, threading their fingers together. I found you. Kale's breath hitched. I spent my whole life running from what I am. Zora continued. Hiding. Surviving. Telling myself that was enough. She met his eyes. It's not. Not anymore. I want more. I want this. Zora. I love you. The words came easier than she'd expected. Not because of the bond or the threads or any magic, because you saw me when I was invisible. Because you gave me choices when everyone else gave me chains. Because you're stubborn and protective, and you look at me like I hung the stars. Kale's free hand came up to cup her face, his thumb tracing her cheekbone. I look at you like that because you did hang the stars, he said roughly. My entire world was darkness, and then you appeared. Fierce and frightened and so damn brave it took my breath away. He leaned close, his lips brushing hers. I love you, Zora. I've loved you since you told me I didn't owe you anything for saving my life. Maybe even before that. So what happens now? Now? He pulled back, and she saw the vulnerability beneath the hope. Now I ask. Properly, the way I promised. He dropped to one knee, right there in the garden, morning dew soaking through his trousers. Zora. Rejected Omega. Thread seer. The woman who dragged me back from death and showed me how to live again. His voice was steady, but his hands trembled as he held hers. Will you bond with me? Not because fate demands it. Not because some thread says we belong together, but because we choose each other. Today. Tomorrow. Every day after. Zora's vision blurred with tears. She thought about the woman she'd been, hiding in a cottage at the edge of Thornwick, convinced she'd never be anything more than an outcast with a dangerous gift. That woman wouldn't recognize her now, wouldn't believe this was possible, but it was. All of it. Yes, she whispered. Then, stronger. Yes. To all of it. To everything. Kale surged to his feet, sweeping her into his arms and spinning her around while she laughed, the sound startling birds from nearby branches. When he set her down, he kissed her. Deep and thorough, full of promise and relief and joy. From somewhere behind them, Mira's voice drifted across the garden. Finally! I've been waiting days for this. They broke apart, laughing. Mira stood on the path, arms crossed, looking thoroughly pleased with herself. You knew? Kyle asked. Everyone knew. Mira rolled her eyes. The entire pack has been taking bets on when you'd actually propose. Who won? Zora asked. Rin. She said you'd do it somewhere meaningful instead of somewhere fancy. Mira grinned. She knows you too well, brother. The bonding ceremony was held under the full moon. Mira stood beside them as witness, healthier now, the shadows slowly fading from her eyes. The entire pack gathered in the great hall, faces lit by 100 candles. Zora wore deep green silk that made her dark hair glow. Kale wore formal leathers marked with his family's crest, looking every inch the Alpha King and looking at her like she was the only person in the room. The vows were simple. I choose you, Kale said, his voice carrying to every corner of the hall. Not because fate demands it, but because my heart does. I will protect you, cherish you, and stand beside you in darkness and light. Today, tomorrow, always. I choose you, Zora replied, her voice steady despite the tears streaming down her cheeks. Not because a thread connects us, but because I connect us. Every day I wake, I will choose you again. Through storms and silence, through joy and grief, you are my home. The pack erupted in cheers. Kale kissed her, soft and sweet, and Zora felt the bond between them flare. Not a chain, but a bridge. Connecting them, yes, but leaving room for each to be whole on their own. Later, much later, they lay tangled together in their chambers, moonlight spilling across the furs. "Tell me something," Kyle murmured, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on her shoulder. "Something I don't know." Zora thought for a moment. "That night in the garden, when I found you dying, I almost didn't go outside." She felt his hand still against her skin. "It was raining. I was tired. I told myself it was probably just a wounded deer, and someone else could deal with it in the morning." "What changed your mind?" "The pull." She tilted her head to look at him. "It was stronger than anything I'd felt before, like something was calling me. Like if I ignored it, I'd regret it for the rest of my life." Kale's expression softened. "And now? Now I know I was right." She pressed closer, feeling safe and cherished and home. "You were calling me, Kale. Before we ever met, before any bond existed, some part of you was reaching for some part of me. And you answered. I answered." He kissed her forehead, pulling her tighter against him. "Your turn," she said. "Tell me something I don't know." Kale was quiet for a moment. Then, "I've been carrying something for 2 years. Guilt, mostly. The belief that I'd failed everyone who mattered. My parents, Mira, the kingdom." His voice roughened. "That night, bleeding out in your garden, I'd almost given up. The pain was too much. The wounds too deep. I was ready to let go." Zora held her breath. "Then I felt you." His arms tightened around her. This warmth, reaching through the darkness, refusing to let me fall. "You didn't just heal my body, Zora. You reminded me why I wanted to live." He tilted her chin up, meeting her eyes. "You gave me back my reason." "And what's your reason now?" "You." He said it simply, like it was the most obvious truth in the world. "You and Mira and this life we're building. A future I never thought I'd have." She kissed him then, pouring everything she couldn't say into it. They fell asleep wrapped around each other, the bond humming between them. Outside, the moon climbed higher, casting silver light across Ironhold. In the garden below, the old oak stood sentinel over the spot where a rejected Omega had found a dying wolf and changed both their fates. Zora had saved his life that night, expecting nothing in return. By morning, a king had stood at her door, and in the end, they'd saved each other. Where are you listening from? Let's meet in the comments. I love hearing your thoughts, and if you'd like to support me, please subscribe. It's free, and it helps more people hear these stories.